Captain Kim Ju-won stared at the tactical display in the dim light of the bridge. Her fingers danced across the holographic interface as she analyzed the hegemony fleet movements. The experimental vessel Defiance hummed around her, its systems a unique fusion of human ingenuity and salvaged alien technology. 6 years, she whispered to herself. 6 years since Earth fell. The memory still haunted her. The galactic hegemony had swept through the solar system with overwhelming force. They had called humans primitive and weak. Their massive warships had darkened Earth's skies before the bombardment began. Billions died in days. Ju-won had been testing the prototype Defiance in the outer system when it happened. She couldn't save her world, but she had survived. The ship's life support system cycled with a soft hiss. Ju-won looked around the cramped bridge. It wasn't much, but it was home now. The Defiance was small by military standards, only 120 meters long. But what it lacked in size, it made up for in innovation. Ju-won had spent these years hiding in asteroid belts across multiple systems, studying hegemony technology and understanding their tactics. She scavenged parts from destroyed ships and abandoned outposts. She hacked into their networks and stole their secrets. The Defiance was her masterpiece. "System check," she commanded. The ship's computer responded in its neutral voice. "All systems operational. Shield capacity at 98%. Weapon systems charged. Stealth systems active." Ju-won nodded. The hegemony believed their technology superior in every way. They couldn't imagine a human ship with shields that could absorb energy attacks or engines that could move in ways their physics said were impossible. Her stomach growled. She ignored it and reached for the cold cup of synthetic coffee instead. Food supplies were running low again. Another reason to act soon. The communication array pinged. Ju-won straightened in her chair. Another intercepted transmission. She had positioned specialized drones throughout this sector, designed to look like space debris while collecting hegemony communications. "Decoding transmission," the computer announced. A scratchy alien voice filled the bridge. "By order of the Supreme Council, Fleet Admiral Park has commanded the ceremonial gathering. All primary battle groups will assemble in the Proxima system to commemorate the glorious conquest of the human world." Ju-won's lips curled into a determined smile. Perfect timing. She pulled up the star charts and began calculating. The Proxima system, just 2 jumps away, close to where Earth had been. A fitting location for their celebration, and for her revenge. Ju-won walked to the small viewport and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the hegemony believed they had wiped out humanity. They thought Earth was their greatest triumph. They were about to learn how wrong they were. She returned to her console and began plotting jump coordinates. The Defiance's engines could manage the distance easily, especially with the modifications she'd made to the alien drive core. The hegemony had never fully understood the potential of their own technology. Ju-won opened a secure compartment beneath her console and removed a small metal box. Inside was a simple silver locket, her last connection to Earth. She opened it to reveal a tiny hologram of her family. Her parents and younger brother smiled back at her, frozen in time on a beach from her childhood. "I'm still here," she whispered to them, "and they'll remember humanity exists." She closed the locket and returned it to its hiding place. There was no room for sentiment now, only determination. Ju-won pulled up the tactical simulations she'd been refining. One ship against hundreds seemed impossible, but the Defiance wasn't an ordinary ship, and Ju-won wasn't an ordinary captain. She had studied every hegemony battle tactic, every fleet formation pattern. She knew their weaknesses better than they did. The computer pinged again. Drone network synchronized, ready for deployment. Ju-won nodded. The drones were perhaps her greatest achievement, small autonomous craft disguised as space debris. The hegemony would never detect them until they activated. Each was programmed to target communication arrays and sensor nodes, creating confusion in the enemy fleet. She checked the weapon systems one last time. The Defiance carried modified hegemony cannons, but with a critical difference. Juwon had discovered the alien shield systems operated on fixed energy frequencies. Her weapons could rapidly cycle through frequencies, finding the gaps faster than their shields could adapt. Juwon plotted the first jump coordinates. The engines hummed as they powered up. In 12 hours, she would reach the outskirts of the Proxima system. Then she would wait for the Hegemony fleet to gather. One human ship against the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. To anyone else, it would seem like suicide. But Juwon had learned something important about the Hegemony in these 6 years. Their greatest weakness was their arrogance. They believed themselves unbeatable. That belief would be their downfall. Jump sequence initiated, the computer announced. Juwon felt the familiar pull as the ship prepared to enter fold space. She gripped the console and allowed herself a small smile. "Let the ceremony begin," she said softly as the stars outside the viewport stretched into lines of light. Lee Sunho stood behind Juwon in the dimly lit tactical room of the Defiance. His tall, lean frame cast a shadow over the holographic display showing their battle plan. For the 10th time, he watched the simulation run through its cycle. The small blue dot representing their ship danced through a sea of red enemy vessels, executing maneuvers no ship should be able to perform. "It's still suicide," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. After 3 years working alongside Juwon, he had learned to trust her instincts. Juwon turned to face him, her dark eyes reflecting the blue light of the display. "Only if you think like them," she replied. "The Hegemony bases everything on their understanding of physics. They'll never expect what we've developed." Sunho rubbed his tired eyes. Before Earth fell, he had been a theoretical physicist, not a soldier. Now he was both, using his knowledge to help build weapons that might avenge their world. "The micro-jumps will work," Juwon continued. "We can appear and disappear faster than their targeting systems can lock on." The Defiance's unique propulsion system was their greatest advantage. Juwon had modified the alien jump drive to perform what should be impossible: instantaneous short-range teleportation. Their shields operated on principles that confused Hegemony sensors, making the ship appear to be in multiple places at once. "And if they adapt?" Sunho asked. "They won't have time," Juwon said with quiet confidence. "Their chain of command is too rigid. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late." Sunho nodded toward the cargo bay below. "And the drones?" Through the viewing window, they could see the 30 small devices lined up in neat rows. Each was roughly the size of a human fist, disguised to look like ordinary space debris. Inside each one was a weapon system that could disrupt Hegemony communications. "Programmed and ready," Juwon confirmed. "They'll think they're just space debris until it's too late." Sunho walked to the small food station and poured 2 cups of synthetic coffee. He handed one to Juwon, who took it gratefully. "You know," he said, "back on Earth, I used to hate coffee. Now I'd give anything for the real thing." Juwon smiled faintly. "When this is over, maybe we'll find a colony world where they grow it." "When this is over," Sunho repeated. "If they survived," he didn't say. He pulled up the personnel files they had stolen from Hegemony databases. "Tell me about Grand Admiral Han again." Juwon's face hardened. Han led the final attack on Earth. He's considered a tactical genius among the Hegemony. 30 years of service, never lost a battle. "Until now," Sunho added. "Until now," Juwon agreed. They spent the next hour going over the plan again. Their roles were clear. Juwon would pilot the ship through the impossible maneuvers, while Sunho managed the weapon systems and drone network. They had practiced countless times, but never against real enemies. The ship's computer alerted them they were approaching their destination. Together, they walked to the bridge, where the main viewport showed the stars of the Proxima system. "We'll wait here," Juwon said, indicating a position behind a small moon. "The sensors show the Hegemony ships are already gathering." Sunho took his position at the tactical station. He brought up the long-range scanners. Already, dozens of massive Hegemony warships were entering the system, arranging themselves in their ceremonial formation. "Look at them," he said quietly. "So confident, so arrogant." Jiwan nodded. "That's their weakness." The ship's communication system suddenly pinged. Sun Ho looked at the display with surprise. "We're picking up a transmission from a hegemony scout ship," he said. "They're reporting. They think they detected our energy signature during our last jump." Jiwan frowned. "Can they confirm our position?" "No," Sun Ho said after reviewing the data. "But they're sending a report to the flagship." In the gleaming command center of the hegemony flagship, Grand Admiral Han stood tall, his blue-tinged skin shining under the bright lights. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he read the intelligence report on his personal display. "A surviving human vessel," he said, his voice laced with disbelief. "Preposterous. Their world is ash." The junior officer who had brought the report stood stiffly at attention. "The scout ship detected an unusual energy signature, Admiral. It doesn't match any known hegemony pattern." Han waved a 6-fingered hand dismissively. "Sensor malfunction, or perhaps a piece of human technology still floating in space. Nothing more." The energy signature suggested a modified jump drive. "Sir," the officer persisted, "if humans have adapted our technology—" "Impossible," Han interrupted. "Humans are primitive creatures. They'd barely managed spaceflight before we crushed them. They could never understand our advanced systems, let alone modify them." Han turned to the massive display showing the gathering fleet. 500 vessels, arranged in perfect geometric patterns, the most powerful armada ever assembled in this sector of the galaxy. "Today we celebrate our greatest victory," he announced to the command crew. "The elimination of the only species that ever dared to resist us. Let nothing disrupt our ceremony." The junior officer hesitated, then bowed and retreated. As he left the command center, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. But no one questioned Grand Admiral Han and lived. Back on the Defiance, Sun Ho monitored the hegemony communications. "They've dismissed the report," he told Jiwan. "They don't believe we exist." Jiwan's lips formed a thin, determined line. "That's exactly what I was counting on." The Defiance hung in the darkness of space, engines quiet, systems in standby mode. Through the main viewport, Jiwan and Sun Ho watched the gathering of the hegemony fleet. 500 warships arranged in perfect geometric patterns, each one a testament to alien power and arrogance. "They're all here," Sun Ho said quietly. His hands moved over the tactical console, confirming their targets. "Every major battle group is represented." Jiwan nodded, her face calm, but her eyes intense. "Are you ready?" Sun Ho took a deep breath. "As ready as I'll ever be." For 6 years they had prepared for this moment. 6 years of hiding, planning, and building. Now they would either avenge Earth or join their people in death. There was no middle ground. "Activate all systems," Jiwan ordered. The Defiance came to life around them. Lights brightened, engines hummed, and weapons charged. The modified jump drive pulsed with energy unlike anything the hegemony had ever designed. "Jump coordinates locked," Sun Ho confirmed. Jiwan's hand hovered over the control. "Execute." Space bent around them. In less than a heartbeat, the Defiance dropped out of its modified jump field at the edge of the ceremonial formation. The small human vessel appeared seemingly from nowhere, directly in the path of the flagship's sensors. Alarms immediately blared across the hegemony fleet. The perfect formation rippled as ships registered the unexpected arrival. "Broadcast on all frequencies," Jiwan ordered, her voice steady. Sun Ho nodded, opening the channel. The communication system glowed green, indicating a successful connection to every ship in the hegemony fleet. Jiwan stood tall, her eyes fixed on the massive flagship in the center of the formation. She spoke clearly, letting her words carry her determination. "This is Captain Kim Jiwan of Earth. You thought humanity died. You were wrong." On the hegemony flagship, Grand Admiral Han stood from his command chair as the message played across the main screen. The bridge crew stared in shock at the image of the human woman, her dark eyes burning with defiance. After a moment of stunned silence, Han laughed. The sound echoed across the command deck, and his officers joined in nervously. "A single human ship," Han said, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence. "How delightful. The universe has provided entertainment for our celebration." He turned to his communications officer. "Put this human vessel on the main screen. Let all my officers enjoy this curiosity." The massive display at the front of the bridge switched to show the Defiance. It was small compared to the hegemony vessels, but it glowed with an unusual energy signature that made several of the tactical officers exchange concerned glances. "Surround it," Han commanded with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Let's make this quick." Across the fleet, 30 hegemony destroyers broke formation. They moved with practiced precision, encircling the small human vessel. Their weapons charged, targeting systems locked. On the Defiance, Sun Ho watched the tactical display as the destroyers surrounded them. "They're targeting us," he reported. "All ships charging weapons." Juan took her seat at the command console. "Shield status." "Ready," Sun Ho confirmed. "The absorption matrix is at full capacity." Juan nodded. "Hold position. Let them fire first." The destroyers completed their encirclement. For a moment, there was silence in space. Then, on Han's command, 30 hegemony vessels fired simultaneously. Brilliant energy beams cut through the darkness, all converging on the Defiance. It was enough firepower to vaporize a small moon, the standard procedure for dealing with nuisance vessels. The energy struck the Defiance from all directions, but instead of exploding, the human ship glowed. Its shields captured the energy, absorbing rather than deflecting it. The brightness intensified until sensors across the hegemony fleet automatically dimmed to protect their crews. When the light faded, the Defiance remained intact. More than intact, its shields pulsed with the captured energy, ready to release it back at their attackers. In the flagship's command center, alarms blared as damage reports came in, not from the human ship, but from the destroyers. Their sensors were overloaded, communications disrupted. "Impossible," Han shouted, his composure cracking for the first time. All 4 of his eyes widened as he stared at the intact human vessel. How did they survive? His tactical officer spoke rapidly. "Admiral, the human ship's shields didn't just block our attack. They absorbed it. Energy readings indicate they've harnessed the power for their own use." "That's impossible," Han repeated, but with less certainty. "No species has that technology." On the Defiance, Juman allowed herself a small smile as she watched the confusion spread through the enemy fleet. The destroyers that had fired on them were now backing away, trying to regroup. "Their formation is breaking," Sun Ho reported, satisfaction evident in his voice. "The flagship is sending conflicting orders." Juan nodded. Everything was proceeding as she had predicted. The hegemony relied on strict protocols and hierarchical command structures. Confusion was their greatest weakness. She leaned forward in her chair, her eyes gleaming with determination. "Now, Sun Ho, show them what one human ship can do." Sun Ho's fingers flew across the tactical console. The Defiance's engines flared with captured energy. In a maneuver that defied conventional physics, the small human vessel shot forward at impossible speed, directly toward the heart of the hegemony fleet. The Defiance streaked through space, leaving a trail of confused hegemony vessels in its wake. Juwan's hands moved across the controls with practiced precision as she executed maneuvers that should have been impossible. The ship twisted, turned, and jumped in patterns that defied the laws of physics as the aliens understood them. On the tactical display, Sun Ho tracked the enemy's responses. The hegemony ships were trying to form a new attack pattern, but they were too slow. By the time their weapons locked onto the Defiance's position, the human vessel had already moved elsewhere. "Their tactical computers can't predict our movements," Sun Ho reported, a note of satisfaction in his voice. "They're firing at our previous locations." Jiwan nodded, her face calm despite the chaos surrounding them. She twisted the controls again, sending the Defiance into a spiral that brought them within firing range of a hegemony cruiser. "Weapons ready," Sunho announced. "Fire," Juwon commanded. The Defiance released a burst of energy, the same energy they had absorbed from the destroyer's attack earlier. But now it was focused, modified, and directed with precision. The beam struck the cruiser's shields, cycling rapidly through different frequencies until it found the gap in the alien defenses. The cruiser's shields failed. A second shot disabled its engines. The massive ship began to drift, powerless. 3 more hegemony warships moved to intercept the Defiance. Their weapons charged, but Jiwan was already executing another impossible maneuver, slipping between them and causing 2 of the ships to fire upon each other. "Their coordination is breaking down," Sunho said. On his display, the perfect geometric formation of the hegemony fleet had dissolved into chaos. Ships moved without clear purpose, some colliding with each other as they tried to target the elusive human vessel. Jiwan glanced at the time display. "It's time. Activate the drone network." Sunho pressed a sequence of commands. Across the battlefield, what had appeared to be harmless space debris suddenly came to life. 30 small autonomous craft, each no bigger than a human fist, powered up their engines and targeted the key command and communication ships in the hegemony fleet. The drones moved too fast for the hegemony's defensive systems to track. They attached themselves to communication arrays, sensor nodes, and command bridges. Once in position, they began broadcasting interference signals on all hegemony frequencies. "Drone network active," Sunho confirmed. "Jamming successful." The effect was immediate and devastating. The hegemony fleet operated on a strict command hierarchy. Without clear orders from their superiors, the captains of individual vessels were paralyzed, unable to make decisions or coordinate their actions. Jiwan used this confusion to their advantage. The Defiance danced through the disorganized fleet, disabling ship after ship with precisely targeted strikes. They weren't trying to destroy the aliens, just disable them and demonstrate humanity's ingenuity. On the hegemony flagship, alarms blared from every console. The command center, once a model of order and efficiency, had descended into chaos. Officers shouted contradictory reports as the main display flickered with static. Grand Admiral Han stood in the center of this storm, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief and rage. "This cannot be happening," he shouted, smashing his fist against the tactical display. The screen showed more red indicators than green, representing disabled or unresponsive ships, throughout his once proud fleet. "We've lost contact with the 3rd Division," a communications officer reported. "The 5th Division is firing on our own ships," another added. "They can't distinguish friend from foe with the interference. The human vessel is targeting our command ships specifically," the tactical officer said. "It's as if they know our weaknesses." Han's skin darkened with anger. "Call in the elite divisions. I want every reserve ship in this sector to converge on our position now." The communications officer tried to comply, but the interference made long-range communication difficult. Still, the message got through. Deep in the system, the hegemony's elite reserve force received the desperate call and moved to respond. On the Defiance, Sunho monitored the long-range sensors. New energy signatures appeared at the edge of the system, moving rapidly toward the battle. "Captain, we have 60 more warships incoming," he reported. "Elite divisions, based on their energy signatures." Jiwan nodded, unsurprised. "Just as we expected." She had studied hegemony tactics long enough to predict Han's response. They're bringing in their best ships now. Despite the success they'd achieved so far, Sunho felt a moment of doubt. They had managed to confuse and disable much of the ceremonial fleet, but the elite divisions were different. These were the hegemony's true warriors, with better training and more advanced ships. "Can we handle 60 more?" he asked quietly. Jiwan's eyes never left the controls. "We don't need to defeat them," she reminded him. "We just need to show them they can be defeated." She adjusted their course, bringing the Defiance back toward the center of the battlefield where the disabled Hegemony flagship drifted. Around them, the once mighty fleet was in disarray, ships firing blindly or not at all. "Prepare the final maneuver," Juan ordered. Sun Ho entered the commands they had rehearsed so many times. The Defiance's engines began to charge in a new configuration. The ship's computer calculated the complex sequence of micro-jumps that would be required. As the elite divisions approached, Juan took a moment to look at the devastation they had caused. One small human ship had crippled the mightiest fleet in the galaxy. Earth was still gone, but humanity had proven it would not be forgotten or underestimated again. "Are you ready?" she asked Sun Ho. He nodded, his hands poised over the controls. "Ready." Juan took a deep breath. "For Earth," she said quietly. "For Earth," Sun Ho echoed. The Defiance hung in space for just a moment as its systems charged for the final phase. Around it, the Hegemony fleet was in chaos. Disabled ships drifted across the battlefield. The elite divisions were approaching fast, their weapons primed. "All systems ready," Sun Ho reported from the tactical station. Juan took a deep breath. "Execute final sequence." The ship disappeared, then reappeared between two Hegemony cruisers before vanishing again. The Defiance executed a series of rapid jumps, staying in each position for only milliseconds. The alien vessels fired at where the human ship had been, only to hit their own allies as the Defiance jumped away. From the bridge of his damaged flagship, Grand Admiral Han watched in horror as his fleet tore itself apart. Every time a ship targeted the human vessel, it was gone before the weapons fired, causing devastating friendly fire incidents. "Cease fire," Han shouted into the fleet-wide channel. "All ships cease fire immediately." But the command came too late. The carefully coordinated elite divisions had fallen into the same trap as the ceremonial fleet. Their rigid training worked against them, making their responses predictable. On the Defiance, Juan executed a perfect micro-jump that positioned them directly behind the Hegemony flagship. It was massive compared to their small vessel, but now it was vulnerable. "Target their engine control systems and main weapons array," Juan ordered. Sun Ho locked onto the targets. "Ready. Fire." The Defiance released a precisely calibrated energy burst. It sliced through the flagship's weakened shields and disabled its propulsion and weapons systems without destroying the vessel. The mighty ship went dark for a moment before emergency systems came online. "Direct hit," Sun Ho confirmed. "Their flagship is disabled." Juan nodded, then turned to her tactical officer. "Broadcast the battle footage to all subjugated worlds." Sun Ho's fingers flew across his console. They had prepared this transmission carefully, compiling footage from the Defiance's external cameras and tactical displays. It showed, without doubt, how one human ship had defeated the galaxy's most powerful fleet. "Signal is breaking through their censorship protocols," Sun Ho confirmed after a moment. His voice filled with wonder. "The entire galaxy is watching." On thousands of worlds across the galaxy, beings of all species stared at their communication devices in amazement. The Hegemony's iron grip had seemed unbreakable. Their military might was legendary. Yet here was proof that they could be defeated. Juan stood from her command chair. "Keep our defensive systems at maximum." "I need to prepare." "Prepare for what?" Sun Ho asked, though he already knew the answer. "To end this properly." Juan walked to the small armory near the bridge and began to don her tactical armor. The black suit conformed to her body, enhancing her strength and providing protection against energy weapons. Sun Ho followed her. "You can't be serious. Boarding the flagship is too dangerous, even with their systems down." Juan checked her sidearm. "The galaxy needs to see this, Sun Ho. Not just a ship defeating their fleet, but a human facing their admiral directly." She secured the last piece of armor and turned to her friend. "Keep the engines hot. I'm going to pay Grand Admiral Han a personal visit." Sun Ho wanted to argue, but he knew that look in her eyes. He nodded once. "I'll prepare the boarding shuttle." 20 minutes later, Juwan's shuttle docked with the damaged flagship. The hegemony's security systems were offline, allowing her to enter unopposed. She moved through the massive vessel with purpose, following the path to the command center that she had memorized from stolen ship plans. The few hegemony crew members she encountered were too shocked by her presence to resist. Most simply stared as the armored human walked confidently through their hallways. When she reached the command center, the doors slid open to reveal Grand Admiral Han standing alone, his back to her, staring at the tactical display showing his defeated fleet. "Grand Admiral Han," Juwan said. The alien turned slowly, all four of his eyes focused on her with cold hatred. "Human, have you come to kill me?" Juwan shook her head. "If I wanted you dead, I would have destroyed this ship. I came to deliver a message." "What message could possibly matter now?" Han asked bitterly. "The same message I've just sent to every world under hegemony control," Juwan replied. "Humanity is not extinct. We will not be forgotten, and we will not be underestimated again." She stepped closer, her weapon lowered but ready. "You destroyed our world, but you failed to destroy our spirit. Remember that, Admiral, when the rebellions begin." As if on cue, reports started flooding in from across the galaxy. On hundreds of planets, people were rising up against their hegemony oppressors. The footage of the battle had spread faster than anyone could have predicted, inspiring those who had long lived in fear. "Remember the Defiance," became the cry on world after world as beings of all species took up arms against their rulers. 2 weeks after the battle, the Defiance drifted in a remote sector of space. Juwan and Sunho had retreated to recover and repair their ship after leaving Han alive to witness the beginning of his empire's collapse. The communication system pinged with an incoming transmission. Juwan opened the channel cautiously, then felt her heart skip as the message played. "This is Colony Horizon," a human voice said. "We received your broadcast. There are more of us out here than you know. We've been hiding, building, waiting for a sign." Juwan exchanged a look with Sunho. Hope, something they had almost forgotten, bloomed in their chests. "Send them our coordinates," Juwan said. As Sunho complied, Juwan looked out at the stars. For the first time in 6 years, she allowed herself to believe that a future for humanity was possible. "This isn't the end," she told Sunho as they plotted the course to meet their people. "It's just the beginning." Across the galaxy, the story of the Defiance spread from world to world, system to system. One human ship had shown the entire galaxy that even the mightiest empire could fall. The age of the hegemony was ending. A new age of freedom was dawning. The end